Tonight's speaker is Katie Fallon. I've seen her talk before, and I love vultures as well. I think they're cute. I worked with them on doing bird shows at one point in my life. Vultures are often overlooked, underappreciated, and unloved, despite the vital role they play in healthy ecosystems. Worldwide, vultures are more likely to be threatened or endangered than any other group of raptors. But in the United States, the turkey and black vultures may be increasing in number. Based on Katie Fallon's recent book, this fun presentation will discuss the life and times of the noble turkey vulture, including its feeding, nesting, and roosting habits, migratory behaviors, and common misconceptions. Take it away, Katie. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm excited to talk with everybody today. Listening and thinking about fall migration is exciting because turkey vultures, of course, are a migratory species, and I'll talk more about that in a couple minutes. But just thank you again for having me. And I'm going to share my screen, and these virtual presentations are always a little funny because I can't really tell if you are laughing at my jokes or not. So I'll just pretend you're laughing, and or I'll laugh at myself. But anyway, my title of my presentation is the same as the title of my book, Vulture, The Private Life of an Unloved Bird. Although vultures are not unloved by everyone. There are some folks who do love vultures, not just crazy me. This picture was taken at Boyce Thompson Arboretum State Park near Superior, Arizona. If any of you have ever been to Boyce Thompson Arboretum, it's a really wonderful place to go birding.
We're not seeing anything.
Oh, you're not seeing anything?
Just you.
Oh, well, hold on a second. I was looking at my hold on one second. That was really strange. All of a sudden my presentation came up. So
while she's getting that squared away,
okay.
It's coming. Everyone, please mute and stop your video because it interferes with the bandwidth. We don't want to have any issues. Thank you.
Okay, now you all see this, right?
Yes.
Now that you've all muted. Okay. Okay, excellent. So let me make it so I don't have to look at myself while I'm talking. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying here, I'm not the only person who likes vultures. There are some other folks who think vultures are cool also. And this particular photograph was taken at Boyce Thompson Arboretum State Park, where in Arizona, where they have not one, but 2 vulture festivals every year. This picture is from the Welcome Back Buzzards Festival. There's also a Bye Bye Buzzards Festival that's in September. I should mention that buzzard is what we sometimes call vultures here in North America, but that's not really the official correct term for them. Buzzard is an old world word for a hawk in the buteo family. So if you were in the UK, you might call a red-tailed hawk a red-tailed buzzard. So the idea, oops, I didn't mean for that to come up yet. Part of the reason that we think folks in North America call New World vultures buzzards is that people from Europe came and saw these large dark birds in the sky and called them buzzards because that's what they would have been in Europe. Anyway, so there are other folks that do like vultures, and there are vulture festivals in several parts of the country to celebrate these birds that get this sort of bad reputation that's undeserved, in my opinion. They do a lot of great good works for our ecosystem, which we'll talk about in a minute. The book, my first version of the book came out in 2017, and then it was reissued with a new publisher. and given a new cover and a new color photo section that came out in the fall of 2020, you know, and right in the middle of the pandemic, which is, you know, when everybody wants a book to come out, right? Something that you can't go out and promote in real life. But anyway, there is this new version of the book with this beautiful color photo of this is Boris, the turkey vulture, on the cover. And she's a bird that lives at the Avian Conservation Center of Appalachia, which I was talking about a little bit before the presentation started. It's a group that I work with here in Morgantown, West Virginia. We rehabilitate and try to release injured migratory birds of all native species, including, of course, turkey vultures. So let's just, enough about my book and let's talk about these birds. So my first few slides have a lot of words, but after that, it's not as many words. So don't be alarmed by all the words. So the big picture on vultures, there are 23 species worldwide, 16 in the old world, and then 7 here in the new world. Most people agree that the old world vultures and the new world vultures are not very closely related to each other, although they fill a similar role in the ecosystem. They're probably not very closely related. The old world birds are thought to be more closely related to hawks and eagles. And the new world birds, people are not completely sure. They've moved them around taxonomically several times. They were traditionally grouped with raptors, then they were moved to storks, and now they are back with raptors again. But the common ancestor that New World vultures share with raptors was hawks and eagles, was probably further back than the Old World birds. So, but worldwide, vultures do sort of the same thing, even if they're not closely related to each other. In the Old World, the vultures are not doing as well as they are here in this hemisphere. 11 of those 16 African and Eurasian vultures are endangered, and 8 species are considered critically endangered. And here in North America, we have just one critically endangered vulture, the California condor. Of course, they're doing much better than they had been in the 1980s, but they're still considered a critically endangered species. Threats worldwide to vultures are similar. Poisoning is a problem with vultures in many parts of the world. Here in North America, lead toxicity, lead poisoning is a problem for California condors. It's also a problem for other species, but the California condor is the one who kind of gets the most press news coverage about it because they are critically endangered. In Asia, some of you may have heard about the Vulture Crisis. In the 1990s, people started noticing vultures kind of falling out of trees dead, hanging from trees dead, you know, dying, being very sick acting. And after a few years, they determined that the cause was a veterinary pharmaceutical called diclofenac that was being fed to cattle before the cattle would die. It's an NSAID like ibuprofen that treats a wide variety of ailments in cattle. Unfortunately, if a cow dies having eaten or been given diclofenac shortly before death, and then the vultures eat the carcass, the vultures can die of toxicity caused by the NSAID. So there are several species of vultures in India and Pakistan and Nepal that are critically endangered now because of this diclofenac, which has now been banned in those countries, but it's still, the ramifications are still being felt because the birds are so long-lived, they take a while to breed and reproduce. So, but there are captive breeding programs in India for these species.
And if I can interrupt real briefly, that
sure.
problem has also cropped up in Africa now.
Oh yes, I'm getting Africa next.
No, sorry, but
no, that's okay. Yes, Africa is another country where diclofenac, and in the European Union, diclofenac is still being used to treat livestock. It doesn't seem to, diclofenac doesn't seem to affect turkey vultures and black vultures the same way it does the old world birds, but it is still being used in parts of Europe and Africa. Also in Africa, there are other poisons that are given, and vultures are not always the intended target. For example, lions or other predators might target herds, livestock herds. So a farmer may poison a carcass and kind of put it on the edge of the herd land. So if a lion would come to bother the cows, the lion might eat the poisoned carcass and die. But vultures will be the unintended target of a poisoning like that because they would be attracted to a dead animal also. And poaching of elephants and rhinoceros and other large mammals like that in Africa can harm vultures also, because some poachers will poison an elephant carcass. So if any vultures or eagles are going to scavenge the carcass, they would land, eat it, and die instead of sort of flying around in the air above it, that might alert the authorities of a poached carcass. So poisoning in different forms is a problem for vultures in many parts of the world. Electrocution is also a problem for large birds, not just vultures, but hitting power lines kills a lot of large birds. And in some parts of Africa, belief-based persecution happens of some vulture species, especially in southern and western Africa. There are some beliefs that possessing vulture heads might sort of protect your health or bring you good luck. Or in some countries, some parts of some countries, smoking vulture brains, like in a pipe, is supposed to kind of give you this ability to see the future, sort of predict the lottery numbers or know who's going to win, a game. Kind of give you this foresight, like vultures sort of appear above a carcass as if they, have some way of knowing that's supernatural. So this apparently has sort of been on the rise in some parts of Africa during COVID, because there are some beliefs that having a vulture head or a vulture brains would protect you from COVID, which is unfortunate because so many of those birds are not doing well in that part of the world. So speaking of African vultures, this is one of the large African species, one of my favorite species. I should mention that these photographs, I did not take these particular photographs. Any really nice photos are probably ones that I did not take. And any that are sort of blurry are probably mine. But this is a Lapid-Faced Vulture, a very large African species. You can see that large, strong, hooked beak. This is a bird that can really open up a big carcass. And then all the kind of smaller scavengers can come in after. This vulture is a griffin vulture, which I think is just another beautiful old world species. A lot of people think vultures are ugly, and I think there are these really many examples of just these gorgeous birds that are beautiful, if in a different way. Another old world species, one of my favorite. This is the bearded vulture, also known as the lammergeier. Which is a term that people are trying to get away from using. Lammergeier means lamb vulture or lamb eating vulture, and bearded vultures don't kill lambs. They eat their bones if they're already dead. And you can see that this guy's got a bone in his mouth. And bearded vultures, the majority of their diet, about 80% or more, is bones and bone marrow. So these would be one of the last birds to come into a carcass to get the bones. They will sometimes fly up into the sky holding a bone and then drop it onto rocks to break open the bone to get the marrow out of the inside. But it's a really amazing bird adapted to eat bones. And coming over here to this hemisphere, this is the king vulture. If any of you have been birding in Costa Rica or other parts of the tropics, you may have seen these large, mostly white, a little bit of black vultures with these amazing, colorful colorful skin around their faces, which is just a very unusual looking bird, very beautiful. And of course, our friend, the California condor that we have in the Western US, is also, again, a little strange looking, but really beautiful and different from a lot of other birds. They've got those red eyes, those spiky feathers, and that pinkish yellow face that they can inflate and puff up or blush, depending on their mood or what they're trying to communicate to other condors. So even though these birds look different from each other and some are not closely related, they're primarily scavengers worldwide. Most vultures have strong stomach acid and gut flora, so bacteria in their guts that allow them to eat and neutralize a lot of different kinds of pathogens and diseases: rabies, anthrax, botulism, toxin, polio, and others. So they can eat an animal, eat a cow or something that has died from anthrax, and then when the vulture goes to the bathroom, there is not any trace of the disease anymore in their droppings. So they can really help remove diseases from the ecosystem. And quickly, vultures are efficient scavengers that can make short work of a carcass, whereas mammalian scavengers take a longer time often to completely eat a carcass. And of course, we know rabies, the zoonotic disease that none of us want to get rabies, right? And if you have a large concentration of mammalian scavengers eating at the same place, swapping saliva, there's the risk of rabies spreading. If you think about, raccoons and feral cats and everything all sharing the same food dish, that's a way that rabies is spread. And vultures can help reduce the spread of rabies by getting rid of a carcass that may cause mammals to congregate. And this is something I mentioned India a couple minutes ago. When the populations of vultures in India crashed, the population of feral dogs rose, and human rabies cases increased also. And India leads the world in human rabies cases. So it's vultures can be beneficial to public health and stopping some of these disease outbreaks. And that Indian vulture crisis is a good example of that. So turkey vultures, kind of coming back now to our friends here in the US, and of course, turkey vultures are found all throughout the hemisphere. The turkey vulture is the world's most widespread, so it has the biggest range, and it's probably the most abundant vulture. But there's another vulture species that may be more numerous than turkey vultures, and that is the black vulture. But it's difficult to get an accurate count of how many individuals of both of these species there are, because there are a lot of both of them. Turkey vultures have a bigger range, though, than American black vultures. Turkey vultures breed from South Central Canada, all through North America, Central America, and South America to the tip of Argentina. And they are nearly everywhere in between in a variety of habitats. They're in deserts, they're on coastlines, in the forest and mountains, really, grasslands, really all over the place. Turkey vultures are not picky. They've adapted to live in quite a lot of different habitats. Getting out of the cold, though, is pretty important to them. So they are not in the coldest places in the hemisphere. There may be 15 to 20 million turkey vultures worldwide, which is incredible. If you think about the number of some of our warbler species, for example, the cerulean warbler, which is one of my other favorite species, there may only be 400,000 or so cerulean warblers in the world. Comparing that to 20 million turkey vultures, that's a lot of turkey vultures, and there are probably just as many black vultures. There are 6 subspecies of turkey vulture, or usually there are 6 subspecies recognized. Some references say 5, but 3 of these subspecies breed in North America. There's the eastern subspecies that we would see here, east of the Mississippi, And then there is a kind of an upper western, midwestern, western subspecies. And then there is a southwestern subspecies. And then there are 3 others that breed in the tropics. And different subspecies have different migratory strategies, which is really interesting. If you think about broad-winged hawks were mentioned at the start of the presentation. You know, broad-winged hawks are a complete migrant. They all leave, they all leave Maryland, West Virginia, and they head for the tropics. And we don't have broad-winged hawks here in the winter, but turkey vultures are different. Our eastern turkey vultures are considered partial migrants. So we may have fewer of them in the wintertime in, again, parts of Maryland and West Virginia, Pennsylvania, but we may have a few still around. And in parts of the eastern US, we would have quite a lot of turkey vultures in the winter, especially in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, definitely. So our eastern birds are partial migrants. They migrate slowly. Some of them don't migrate at all. But the eastern birds don't go beyond Florida, where the western subspecies and the ones that are kind of in Canada and the upper Midwest, they all leave and go to the tropics. And they are considered a complete migrant, that subspecies. And then some subspecies on the Falkland Islands and other parts of South America are non-migratory and don't leave all year. So it's a pretty interesting species. This is the map from using eBird data from Birds of the World, showing the abundance, the range of turkey vultures. And the purple is, of course, where they can be found all year. And then the red is where they are in the breeding season. And you can see that they stay out of the cold. So in the areas, upper Canada, Alaska, we don't have turkey vultures. And then in the highest peaks of the Andes, we don't have turkey vultures either. But nearly everywhere else, we've got turkey vultures. Probably about 30% of the world's turkey vultures breed in North America, and then 70% are in the tropics. And black vultures, it's probably closer to 10% in North America and 90% in the tropics. So both of our eastern vulture species are really tropical birds, kind of at heart. This is, if you're out bird watching, this is the view that you're most likely going to see of a turkey vulture. They often get mistaken for, eagles at hawk watch spots. But turkey vultures have this underside of the wings and tail are light, sort of the whole way along the wings. Black vultures tend to have white hands on the ends of their wings. But turkey vultures have these this long, thin tail, these long wings that they often hold in a shallow V, and they've got light on the bottom. You can remember that turkey vultures have silver linings. Up close, this is a very handsome turkey vulture. This bird is named Lou. Lou lives at the ACCA here in Morgantown. He's not releasable due to injuries he sustained when he was hit by a vehicle. So he can't fly well enough to go back to the wild, but he's a great ambassador for turkey vultures. Turkey vultures here in the eastern US weigh about 4 pounds. The ones from the upper west are a little bit heavier. The ones from the southwest are a little bit lighter, but ours weigh about 4 pounds. They've got about a 5 to 6 foot wingspan. So the same wingspan approximately as a bald eagle, but they weigh less than half of what a bald eagle weighs. And they've got these chicken-like feet, and you can see that Lou here has got these big flat feet that aren't really meant for grasping and carrying anything. If you see an eagle or a hawk or an owl's feet up close, they've got curved, very sharp, very long talons meant for grabbing and carrying something away. But turkey vultures' feet they're very good for standing on a carcass and then reaching down with their feet or with their beak and tearing chunks off. But their feet are not equipped for carrying anything. Their toe on the back is sort of a small, it almost reminds me of a pinky toe. The helix is the back toe. The helix on a golden eagle is a very, very, very sharp, strong, curved toe that makes them able to grasp and carry away heavy things, but turkey vultures just don't have them. So when people say a turkey vulture carried away my cat, it is not possible. They may drag a dead cat somewhere, but they can't pick it up and carry it in their feet. They've got a beak that's excellent for tearing chunks and swallowing big chunks. You can see that that curved hook, sort of like a crochet hook, that's just great for tearing pieces off of a dead animal. You can also see in this picture that I think you were able to tell that this bird can open its mouth very, very wide. So a turkey vulture can swallow great big chunks of food, and of course they don't chew it. They swallow the chunks. You might be able to tell if you look closely, if you look at the bird's tongue, kind of the back of the tongue, you can see some serrations on the tongue. And that is to help the bird swallow sort of slippery chunks of organs. If you think about, the dead stuff in a carcass that a vulture is eating, a lot of it is kind of slippery and gooey. So they've got that tongue to help them swallow that stuff. Also, you might notice the prominent nostrils on top of the bird's head. And turkey vultures do have an excellent sense of smell. There's some debate about whether or not other birds have a good sense of smell or have any sense of smell at all. But turkey vultures, we know, do use their excellent sense of smell as well as their excellent eyesight to find the food that they eat. Also, there's not many feathers on the head of a turkey vulture, and there are many vulture species, I should say, don't have feathers on their heads. They're sticking their heads into carcasses, and if they had a lot of feathers on their heads, they may get, entrails and other stuff stuck to their faces. So having a featherless face kind of helps it stay clean. Something else interesting I want to point out while I've got this picture here, those white kind of warty bumps right in front of this turkey vulture's eye. I'm not entirely sure what these are or what causes them. I want to find this out for sure someday. It's on my list of things to figure out. But what's interesting is that turkey vultures in the tropics don't have these warty things on their faces, and their turkey vultures aren't born with them. And turkey vultures that come in to a rehab situation when they're young birds and then remain there for the rest of their lives often don't develop them. And this is handsome Boris, the turkey vulture again. She's just a beautiful girl, and she does not have those white warty things on her face. And she came in, she's about 6 years old right now, but she was only about a year old when she came in. And she's never developed those warty things on her face. So I want to find out, what causes it. Anyway, if I find that out, I'll let you know. So turkey vultures are considered obligate scavengers. So the diet is carrion, dead animals. There are a few cases that have been documented of turkey vultures eating live prey, but they've been situations where the bird can walk up to something and sort of swallow it. So like a hatchling turtle or a fish that is washed up on a beach that's not quite dead, they may walk over and swallow it, but they are not equipped for killing things. And usually they find things that have been dead for about a day before they eat them. So they can use that good sense of smell to find them. Although they do learn where reliable sources of carrion occur, and they may check those areas for dead animals, certain stretches of road or farms where carcasses are disposed of on site. They may learn where to find carrion in those situations. There are a lot of great vulture comics. This is one of my favorite ones from Bird and Moon. And people send me these comics because they know I like vultures, but this one is great. My head is bare to prevent rotting flesh from adhering to it. To keep cool, I poop on my legs and feet. And I didn't mention this yet, but this is a really interesting thing that turkey vultures and other species of vulture and other birds, storks do this too. The word for it is urohydrosis. We usually call it an accident in my house, but when the vultures expel liquid waste onto their feet and legs, it helps regulate their body temperature. So it's something interesting. If this ever happens to you, you can say, oh, it's urohydrosis. I did not just go to the bathroom on my legs. A turkey vulture's main defense is projectile vomiting, and it's not just turkey vultures that do this, it's other species of vulture also. But it's interesting to think about why this works. So if a human is bothering a turkey vulture, obviously vomiting in our direction would deter us. It's very stinky. If a turkey vulture vomit gets in your car, for example, it's a very smelly situation. Also, something that might be bothering a turkey vulture that might want to eat a turkey vulture, if a turkey vulture can vomit, that might provide sort of an easy meal for something like a raccoon or a coyote that might eat the vomit and then leave the vulture alone. I have a beagle, and I think that she would probably eat turkey vulture vomit if given the opportunity. And I Am So Awesome is the last slide there, because they are really amazing, interesting birds. Nesting of turkey vultures is also interesting. Speaking of breeding season, turkey vultures are done now, probably in most of the hemisphere, or at least the North America. Turkey vultures are, the babies have fledged, and soon they'll be moving around for the fall and the winter. But they nest in caves, cliffs, abandoned structures like barns, haylofts, sheds, abandoned houses, very large hollow trees, sometimes under a brush pile. They've documented them nesting in abandoned cars, in junkyards, deer hunting tree stands. So a lot of different places, but they don't actually build a nest. They may kind of pick up some leaves or sticks and move them around with their beaks, but they don't actually build any sort of nest. They can't carry anything with their feet. So they don't really do a lot of building. They just might do some moving around of stuff. But caves and cliffs are very popular locations for turkey vulture nests. These particular babies, these are my notes to remind you of the science stuff. These two particular babies in this nest in a hayloft, and the birds have the whole hayloft just to kind of wander around in. Interesting thing about baby turkey vultures, you might notice that they have black or dark gray faces. The turkey vultures don't get their red faces until they're usually older than a year, and it kind of will fade to red. And the beaks are not white. They're black when they're babies, and they will fade to white over the course of the first year or two. There usually are 2 eggs in a nest, and there's usually just 1 nest a year. Both parents share the incubation, and they also share the duties of feeding the chicks once they hatch. Parents will often switch off. One parent will incubate the eggs for half the day, and then the other parent will come and they will switch. The young hatch after about a month, and then the babies are in the nest for quite a long time, about 60 days, which is longer than a lot of hawk species. So they're in the nest for quite a while, 2 months or so. And then once they leave the nest, they will still kind of hang out for another week or two. And then at about 12 weeks, 84 or so days old, they will leave, and they'll go hang out at a communal roost with a bunch of other turkey vultures, where they will follow the other birds to food, find a good warm spot to roost, where there's good wind, but they aren't supported by their parents anymore after they go to that communal roost. Black vultures are different. The parents will continue to support the young for months after they leave the nest, but turkey vultures once they go to that roost, they're all kind of together. Again, up close, they look quite different from an adult turkey vulture. They don't have those red faces or that white beak. They don't get that for, again, 1 to 2 years. Somebody at a presentation in the past told me that this vulture looks a little like Bernie Sanders. And now whenever this picture comes up, I can't unsee it. But it's they're very cute babies, and they've got that white down feathers, which is different from black vulture chicks. Black vulture chicks have kind of tannish, almost brown, buffy down feathers. So why do I have these pictures of baby turkey vultures? It's of course against the law to go into any migratory bird nest and mess with the babies. So we have a permit to do this. My small organization, the ACCA, partners with USGS, Hawk Mountain in Pennsylvania, West Virginia University, and a couple other folks. We visit known turkey vulture nests every year, and we take babies out of the nests and we measure them. We take a blood sample to check for lead, and we put a wing tag on the babies. So the baby vultures are only out of their nest for about 15 minutes, and we usually don't even see the parents. So this is, I put this picture in mostly to show that, happy, the birds are only out of the nest for a few minutes, and getting the blood samples taken is the part that takes the longest. And we take blood samples to check, again, checking for lead. So I mentioned that California condors are negatively impacted by lead poisoning. It's been identified as the biggest hurdle to California condor recovery. Well, turkey vultures and black vultures both can suffer from lead poisoning also, but it takes a lot more lead to negatively impact a turkey vulture or a black vulture. So they can be a good species to study to try to figure out how much lead is out in the ecosystem, since they can eat a lot more of it and not get sick. So we take the blood samples to see how much lead is in these baby turkey vultures. And some nests always have higher lead than other nests. We're not entirely sure why. It's probably wherever the adults are scavenging. To figure out where the adults scavenge, we would have to probably capture an adult and put a transmitter or a tag on it, and we haven't quite gotten that far in our project. But if you wanted to read an interesting study, I'm talking about lead, it could be its own presentation or its own symposium. But on the bottom of the slide here, there's a paper that came out a few years ago that my husband Jesse and a few of our friends were worked on together. The paper is called "Chronic Lead Exposure is Epidemic in Obligate Scavenger Populations in Eastern North America." So we were able to get about 100 dead turkey and black vultures that were killed as nuisance birds by the USDA. And we did some studies on lead deposits in the bones, as well as some blood and some tissue. And we determined that 100% of the birds had evidence of chronic lead exposure in their bodies. And the three top sources of lead were identified as coal-fired power plant emissions, spent ammunition, and emissions from smelting plants. So coal-fired power plant emissions, of course, we all breathe, not just vultures. Spent ammunition, humans hopefully were not eating it. But if you're a turkey vulture and you come upon, a gut pile from somebody's white-tailed deer kill, that's like a fabulous bonanza. If you're a turkey vulture and you come upon a gut pile, and it's sort of what happens in a natural system. The big predator comes in, kills something, takes what it wants, and leaves the rest for the scavengers. Unfortunately, if the birds or other scavengers eat lead, little bits of lead that have been left in the carcass, it can make them sick. Bald eagles and golden eagles can also become very sick from lead poisoning and can handle less than turkey vultures. It only takes a piece of lead about the size of a grain of rice to make a bald eagle very sick. So I also, this is kind of a family affair for us. We sort of make our children come to help. We put them to work, taking notes on the different turkey vulture measurements and weights, things like that. This, of course, was, we still do this even during the times of COVID. We're trying to get our turkey vulture data measuring the beak length. And if the birds are old enough, we give them a wing tag. So why do we give the birds a wing tag instead of putting a metal leg band on the birds? Well, if you remember, turkey vultures, expel that liquid waste onto their legs and feet. So a metal leg band could get degraded by those liquid droppings, or stuff could cake on the leg band and make it impossible to read, and could potentially injure the vulture. So they're very light and floppy, sort of like a cattle ear tag, and they go right over a tendon and through a thin piece of skin with like a punch. So I thought the tags were sort of big, the wing tags, when I first saw them, so I was sort of nervous about it. I asked Keith Bildstein, who was at the time the director of conservation science at Hawk Mountain. He's retired now, but he explained that before that these tags are the same kind of tags that are on California condors. And before they put tags on California condors, they tested them extensively on turkey vultures to make sure that they didn't impede flight. And they found that they didn't. So this particular bird, usually we don't get them resighted, or we get birds that we've tagged resighted right around the nest, but not very far distances. However, this bird that was tagged in July of 2016 showed up in April of 2017 in West Palm Beach, Florida. A bird watcher was watching birds at a wildlife management area and reported the wing tag and the number on the wing tag to the Federal Bird Banding Lab. And the Bird Banding Lab got in touch with us, and we were able to get then in touch with the bird watcher, who said the bird seemed healthy. It was just foraging with other turkey vultures in a wildlife management area, and the only difference was this one had a wing tag. But it was great that now we know where some of these birds go in the winter time. And from a lot of Hawk Mountain's data comes from birds wearing transmitters, in addition to their birds with wing tags. And most folks agree that a bird from Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Florida, southern Florida is about as far as these birds would go on migration. They don't cross the Gulf of Mexico like some of the other subspecies that we'll talk about in 1 second. So this is a turkey vulture wearing a transmitter. This particular transmitter uses solar power, this kind of transmitter, and it uses cell phone towers. When the bird flies by a tower, the transmitter somehow kind of pings, and then we can track where the bird goes. So this particular turkey vulture came in for rehab to the ACCA after being shot. We had a transmitter donated to us to put on this vulture to see where she would go. And this is where she went. So the map on the left, this kind of skinny map, shows where this bird went. The star is where we released the bird near Morgantown, West Virginia. And she went down to northern Georgia in the late fall and then came back. And when she came back, she returned not to the area where she was released, but she came back to the area where she was found. So even after being in rehab for months and then being released and migrating, she still came back to the area where she was from. It's the map on the right sort of shows where her last transmission came in from, and where she spent most of her time. So we haven't had any data from this bird since late 2016, but that doesn't necessarily mean that anything happened to her. She is wearing sort of an outdated cell phone, I guess you could say. AT&T shut down their 2G towers in the end of 2016, and I guess this somehow the technology on her transmitter is not quite good enough, and we have no way of recapturing her and fixing it. So hopefully she's still out there, but even if not, that's a pretty amazing that this bird had several years of being in the wild, after being shot and released. Like, she had a second chance for sure. This particular map is one of Hawk Mountain's turkey vultures from Saskatchewan that wears a transmitter. And these birds from, again, the upper west are complete migrants that all go to the tropics. This particular bird goes to Venezuela and back to Saskatchewan every year. And her mate also wears a transmitter, and he follows about the same migratory path, except he spends the winter usually further in Colombia. So the birds don't seem to spend the winters together, even though the pair has been together since 2007, when they first put the transmitters on the birds. So they kind of seem to have separate winter vacations, and can return to the same abandoned farmhouse to have their nests, which is really pretty amazing. This map is another one of Hawk Mountain's birds that is the Southwestern Subspecies. This is a bird tagged in Arizona with a transmitter, and this bird just goes into Mexico and back. And these Southwestern turkey vultures do a similar sort of migration as our Eastern turkey vultures. They're considered partial migrants. Some of them stay in Arizona all year. Some of them migrate, but they don't go as far as the complete migrants. And this is a map too from Birds of the World. This is one of my favorite things. If you watch this, this shows you weekly estimates of turkey vulture abundance by eBird. And there the birds go in the spring, and then we're getting on fall, and a great number of them leave and head south. So if you are on Birds of the World and you watch these maps, these abundance maps where birds go and they migrate, they're really, I'm kind of obsessed with them. So before we stop, we have to talk for a few minutes about black vultures, because this is a species that has a much worse look at that little face. That's pretty cute, right? These birds have a much worse reputation than turkey vultures. And it's in part due to their reported behavior of sometimes attacking newborn or weak livestock. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, black vultures can be distinguished from turkey vultures. If you're out bird watching, black vultures have those white hands at the end of their wings, and they have that short sort of wedge-shaped tail, whereas turkey vultures have that longer, skinnier tail. So black vultures too, and this is one of those maps that I'm obsessed with that shows you the weekly movements. But black vultures are not they're not thought to be as migratory as turkey vultures. You can see there's a little bit of seasonal movements, but not very much. They're species mostly of the southeastern United States, land the tropics. I mean, obviously most of them are in the tropics, but here in North America, they're mostly in the southeast, although there are reports of the birds moving further north. One possible reason for this is as things get warmer, then these birds that are maybe tropical can stay further north, like a black vulture or a turkey vulture might be able to move further north. Also, we have these big interstate highways that are like vulture buffet tables that haven't been around for very long. Thinking about for how long vultures have been along, millions of years. You've got highways that have only been around for 50, 70 years. We've only had cars for just over 100 years. So we've got all this roadkill that's staying fairly warm on these highways, which is great for vultures. Black vultures can also eat not just carrion, but they can eat dog food, cat food, vegetables, manure, invertebrates. I mean, they can really eat some stuff besides just dead animals, which makes them very able to live, right around humans and kind of clean up after us. So even though their diet's primarily carrion, black vultures get this terrible reputation for occasionally attacking weak or dying animals. But it's of course controversial. In some locations, it's reported that they do this all the time. And then in other locations, it's never reported. There's studies going on right now by some different universities trying to figure out, why some areas report black vulture predation and why some don't. But even in areas where it's reported, it's important to remember that black vultures can't, just like turkey vultures, they can't pick up anything in their feet and carry it away. So if they're going to eat something that's alive, they're going to basically walk up to it on the ground and start eating it. So it's got to be something that can't really move and that's not protected. So one way you can prevent, any real or perceived threat from black vultures is to keep your pregnant animals in or near a barn, or keep humans or dogs around something that's going to, deter vultures from being around. But it's definitely a big debate about whether or not it happens or how often it happens. It also this is a really long quote that I won't read all of it, but black vultures also are sometimes described as like new and like, oh my gosh, they're these birds that no one has seen before. Where are they coming from? They're from somewhere else. They're not native. But yes, black vultures are native, even if they're further north than they have been. They are a native species. This is from John James Audubon's Birds of America that came out around between 1827 and 1838. These were published. So, nearly 200 years ago now. And John James Audubon describes the black vultures range as being all year in Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, parts of Ohio, Maryland. So it's not new, although it may be new in our lifetimes. People in, Indiana, I just read an article saying, oh no, these vultures just showed up and they've never been here before. But they have been there before, but just perhaps not in recent memory. For a few different reasons. One is that we protect black vultures now, and we didn't used to protect raptors up until, I believe, the 1960s. There were still bounties on some raptors paid by the states. Goshawks, Cooper's had bounties on them.
Now the lady said she was having trouble too on Facebook, but now she sent it to me. It's about black vultures, which is the one that flew into our window.
Oh my gosh. And I hear whoever said that flew into your window. That's crazy.
She heard me.
Anyway, but black vultures, there are more of them than we remember them being recently. Partly because we protect raptors now, and also we stopped using DDT. Had a negative impact on black vultures, just like it did peregrine falcons and bald eagles and osprey and a lot of other species. But whatever the case, black vultures are here in abundance. And this picture I took at Myakka River State Park near Sarasota, Florida, and I watched these black vultures go around and check these grills for food, which was really, really fascinating. These birds have learned that like the big predator comes through and eats its meat, on these grills, and these vultures come through and clean up afterwards. Which was amazing. And there were probably 10 other black vultures on the roof of a picnic shelter watching these two go around and check the grills. So they make great use of human leftovers. So this has I should give you a warning of a dead mouse warning. This is a little video of this bird's name is Maverick, and he's a black vulture who was hit by a car at a bar called Mavericks and can't be returned to the wild. And we give this bird a lot of enrichment, a lot of items that he can play with and interact with to kind of keep his mind busy. Black vultures seem to me to be very curious and very active and very willing to interact with items that you give them to investigate in their enclosures. And this bird just I would never have imagined before I started working with these birds how curious and how much fun it is to play with a black vulture. And I cannot explain why our black vulture chases around purple plastic ball pit balls, but the purples are his favorite. And I don't know why he chases them. We do give him these trays of balls with food hidden inside, so he has to kind of search for the food. But the chasing the balls around, I don't know why he does it. And then this, we also give him puzzle feeders that are meant for, to hide a dog treat inside, to have your dog like slide the plastic things to find the pieces of food. And it took our vulture, this black vulture, like 30 seconds to figure out, probably not even 30 seconds, probably 5 seconds to figure out how to slide the little plastic bits to get the food underneath. So this bird is really fun to design enrichment for, which is of course enriching for the humans who get to sit and watch this black vulture try to figure things out. And we haven't given him anything yet that he hasn't been able to figure out. And this is not really just vultures living under human care, but black vultures have been reported to play with balls and like basketballs and soccer balls and stuff that have been left on playgrounds and fields once the humans go away. I can't really explain the behavior, but it's interesting. Black vultures, if any of you have visited like the Everglades or even places in Maryland, actually, where a lot of black vultures congregate, you sometimes have to cover your car with tarps because black vultures will perch on your car and pull the rubber stripping from around the windows or the windshield wipers. I've heard different theories for why they might do this. One is that it's play or it's practicing for tearing apart dead animals. I've also heard that some rubber has ingredients that come from animals or from soy that might taste like an animal to a vulture. But it's interesting behavior. And I could watch that bird play with toys, all day. So getting to the end here. So vultures, a lot of people agree, great vultures, we need them. They keep our ecosystem clean, they're amazing and they're cute, but, vultures are sort of scary. And, they're out there kind of waiting. They seem to be, waiting for things to die. And they're sort of this constant reminder that something might eat our bodies when we die, which is a little bit unsettling. And then, this time of year we start, or really maybe in the next month or two, we start getting these large groups of vultures that roost together. People will send me pictures of vultures, all on their porch railing, and they'll say, Katie, like, I know you like these birds, but are they waiting for me to die? Do they know something I don't know? Probably not. They're vultures in the fall tend to roost together for a couple of reasons. Mostly location. Is there good wind? Is there a lot of food like roadkill? Is the area warmer? That would be a great spot for a vulture to roost. There's also a social aspect where the vultures can follow each other to food. I've heard these roosts kind of described more as like vulture hotels rather than permanent residence, places that vultures may use while they're traveling. Black vultures roost with extended family members, which is pretty interesting. They've done some genetic research and determined that a bunch of black vultures together may all be related to each other. Maybe a pair of vultures with siblings from, or with young from several years, and maybe their mates, all roosting together. So some fears that people have about vultures, do they attack people? Only if they're dead. I don't know of any case of vultures attacking, live humans. They definitely will eat dead humans, but generally they prefer to eat herbivores. So deer, cattle, poultry. I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so maybe me, but they're generally don't attack, or never that I have heard of attack live people. And this is just one of my children feeding our black vulture. And this is our black vulture Maverick is really the only bird at ACCA that I let my kids interact with, because he is such a don't know, gentle, it might not be the right term, but he's not, there's not really any way that he can hurt my kids, and he wouldn't. But people are also afraid, you know, are they waiting for me to die? You know, probably not any more than they're waiting for anything to die. Their turkey vultures are, you know, looking for things that are already dead, and a little bit stinky. They don't follow dying animals or people, despite the movies where, you know, they'll show someone crawling through the desert, you know, about to die with turkey vultures following them. People will tell me, you know, vultures just look creepy, right? They're bald, but you know, bald is beautiful, right? And beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And creepy is just the label that we give things. There's nothing inherently creepy about eating dead things. I don't know many people who eat live things. We all eat dead things too. We just have to cook them first, usually because our digestive systems are not as amazing as the turkey vultures. So if you ever find yourself in this situation, you know, when you're crawling through the desert, dying of thirst, and you see vultures, they're not there for you. They won't eat you until after you're dead. So if you find yourself in this situation, you can just keep calm and carry on. And hopefully,
Terrible.
I was gonna say, hopefully some of you laughed. So I am happy to answer any questions that you have, and thank you for listening to me talk about vultures because it's my favorite subject.
Thank you, Katie. I enjoyed your jokes.
Oh, thanks. And
And
I'll stop sharing here so we can, yes.
yeah, feel free to ask questions in the chat or unmute and just ask them. You're talking about the rubber. There's at Conowingo Dam where people go to watch the bald eagles. There's signs for people to they're not responsible for the vultures eating their windshield wipers. Yeah, I've seen that. I think that they did say it's because the windshield wipers are made from oil.
Yes, it's interesting behavior though. It's you know, I've never I've seen the signs on that from that dam that say the vulture damage not responsible for vulture damage.
Yes.
California condors will do that sort of thing also. I've seen reports of young condors. If the young condors aren't released with adults to sort of show them how to behave, they will sometimes behave badly and be sort of destructive. There was a news report recently about condors that were on some porch tearing apart their deck furniture and their grill and stuff like that, which is kind of like my dream to have a California condor, a critically endangered bird, come and hang out on my porch. But I understand that not everyone likes that.
In New Zealand, there's a species of parrot there called the Kia that apparently also does the same thing with automobiles, eating the rubber bits and all that sort of thing. So I wonder, are they after the same thing? Who knows? But
Yeah, I have heard that before. Yeah, I'm not sure if they, I mean, you know, in theory, a parrot would be a lot more, most people think of parrots as being, you know, a lot, very, very smart. Black vultures, I'm not sure if we've done, you know, intelligence testing on black vultures or how you would do that, but I have heard about Kias before, destroying, rubber stuff in the same way. It's interesting. I can't really explain the behavior of our black vulture chasing around plastic ball pit balls. I mean, I don't really know why he does it, other than I mean, I guess they are social, and they do interact with each other, but we don't put the food inside those plastic balls. I mean, there's food amongst them, but the balls are just plastic. He doesn't, you know, he's never gotten food out of them, so I don't really. It's kind of fun to play fetch with him.
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Why do vultures only come out around 10 o'clock in the morning, and other places in the world, do they come out at 10 o'clock in the morning as well? Like,
So that's a good question. So vultures often wait until the air warms up before they fly, because when the warm air, it's easier for them to fly when the air is warmer. When the warm air starts to rise, they don't have to expend so much energy flapping their wings. So you will often see a lot of vultures sitting around in the morning with their wings out, warming up or potentially drying off from any condensation or dew or anything that's on them from the night. But when the air warms up a little bit, that's when they will often start to fly. So I don't know if that is the same for vultures worldwide, but a lot of large birds, it takes them a little while to get going in the morning, like when the wind is going. I think we mentioned watching hawk migration. First thing in the morning is not, the birds seem to really pick up, a little later on in the morning. Different from if you're out looking for warblers or whatever, you've got to be up at the, really early, but a lot of the large birds that use those thermals to soar kind of have to wait for that warm air to get rising. At least I believe that's why it takes them until like 10 a.m. to get moving. Before I knew this, when I was first getting started trying to watch migration and watching hawks and stuff, this was probably 15 years ago or so, or I scheduled a hawk watch with a group of people from a local YMCA, and I made it too early. And we went out to do the hawk watch, and I was like, I don't know where the birds are. It's 8 a.m. They need to be flying around right now. And we were like getting ready to leave a few hours later after a disappointing, morning. And then all the hawks started.
I'm going to specialize in vultures and hawks then.
Yes.
Mary Lou's with me on that. I don't know if you see in the comments, but there's a few comments saying it was very interesting and great presentation. They learned a lot. And Mary Lou's asking about nighthawks. I don't know why you're asking that.
Because they're late. You can see them really late.
Have a list of late birds.
Yeah.
Oh, Jay, did you want to ask a question?
Well, I not so much a question. I was fortunate in my career that I was able to work with California condors and as well as black and turkey vultures. And I thought all three of them were about the most intelligent, other than parrots, maybe parrots, or corvids. Corvids are the only other really smart bird group, but they were always incredibly inquisitive and seemed to know how to figure things out. And if they had hands with 5 fingers, they'd be worse than raccoons or something, opening locks or whatever they needed to get into.
Yes.
They just incredibly smart animals.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And there are actually, we are working on building Maverick, the Black Vulture, a board with actual locks on it. There are some centers that we've seen that have built, like where you have to slide things and open little doors. I'm not describing it very well, but my kids have one that's like a board that has different locks on it that you open, and there's like a little cute animal inside. And in the case of the vulture, like a little dead animal. But we are going to work on building him one to see if he could actually open locks with his beak, to see what's behind the different doors, because I think he could do it.
Well, you need to put a electronic button inside there so that if he hits the right animal and presses the button, then a piece of food drops out at the bottom of the whole tray there, so he gets a reward. And you'll probably be 30 seconds at the most, and like you say, 10 seconds more likely, he'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, the red button that you slide to the left is the one I got to do this time. So
Yes. Yeah, I have to do this one to get the mouse. Yeah. Yeah.
So so you were talking about people just discovering vultures, and I didn't quite, I mean, I heard the reference to Audubon. So was it that people just weren't paying attention to them, or they had left that area and then were coming back in?
Oh, left the area and we're coming back is what I think. So a lot of these, I've been reading a lot of articles about people being very alarmed because black vultures were like suddenly showing up in parts of Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, places where we are not used to seeing black vultures. But the quote from Audubon was just to sort of show that that Audubon was saying that these, describing the range as being in these places, describing black vultures as being all year in Kentucky and Indiana. But people there may not have seen them for the last 100 years, because we killed so many of them. We shot so many raptors of all species, and then in the beginning of the 1900s, when we used so many pesticides like DDT that caused a lot of populations to drop, and they have shown that black vulture populations were impacted also. So the combination maybe of stopping things like DDT and stopping killing so many, giving them protection, federal protection, that helped their populations return, and then they could return to areas they had previously kind of disappeared from. Also, humans, I mean, usually when you talk about climate change and lots of humans, it's depressing. But for, black vultures, getting a little bit warmer and there being a lot of people around making messes, leaving trash outside, running animals over on the highway. I mean, these are all things that might maybe benefit you as a species. There are trade-offs, of course. If you're eating roadkill, you can get hit by a car. If you are living right around humans tearing apart trash, some people don't like that. Or if it can be unsettling and make a mess. But and if you're going to eat animals that have been shot with lead ammunition, and there's a chance you could get lead poisoning from eating it, you've got that trade-off also. But overall, I mean, black vultures, it seems like they are, and turkey vultures, doing pretty well, which is not the case for many large raptors and vultures in other parts of the world.
Thank you.
Katie, you might take an investigate. Am I getting through here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The butchering of livestock sort of went commercial roughly 120, about the turn of the 1900s, somewhere in that period, maybe 20 years before or after, and with the big livestock yards and stuff like that. And I noticed that in the Audubon quote, he mentioned Cincinnati, which is where I grew up, and black vultures just got to Cincinnati when I was a kid. I mean, didn't get there while I was a kid. They were still there and did not occur much further north than that location, maybe 50 miles at the most, 40 miles to the north of Cincinnati, still in the 1960s and 70s. So I think the decline probably occurred between when the commercial livestock slaughter started and the local farmers. I mean, my grandfather, who had a big farm in Ohio, he never butchered anything there. He took it somewhere else, and then they had it commercially harvested. Yeah, crazy term. So at any rate, I'm sure the offal and all that wasn't as available to the vultures, for many, many decades there in the early 1900s.
Right. And if you think about if you think about just the use of horses too, I mean, we would have had just a lot more big dead animals around before the advent of the automobile.
Absolutely, yeah. Some people suggest that the California condor actually occurred into much of the Southwest prior to the Homo sapiens coming in 18,000 years ago and eliminating the megafauna, as it was called, the giant bison, which was twice the size of our bison, American bison, and other sloths and many other really large animals that just all vanished about 10, 12, 13,000 years ago. And that's when the condors basically moved to the coast, west coast, where the pinnipeds remain.
Right. Yeah. And we would have from what I've read about the fossil record about vultures is that we had a lot more vultures in North America when we had that megafauna, and that most of them went extinct when the megafauna went extinct, like the Miriam's Territorn, which was another huge, larger than a California condor size vulture, that there were a lot of them in the La Brea tar pits, but they went extinct when the megafauna did. If you look at Africa, that has a lot more vulture species than we have in North America, and they have a lot more large vulture species. They still have a lot of their megafauna, their elephants and their rhinos and stuff like that we just don't have anymore. So a lot of our really big vultures are gone, and Africa still has them.
How many wildebeests are there out there still? 10
Yes.
million, or I don't know what the number is, but it's still a lot of beef on the hoof.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you,
Very
Katie.
good talk. I loved it.
Well, thank you. Thanks. I love talking about vultures.
I don't see that there's any more questions and nothing in the chat, and it's 9 o'clock. So thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.